Aloha, aloha, aloha. It's me, Hamwise, the pig detective, coming at you live from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, where it is very sunny and never very cold. I enjoy it here very much. Canada is a beautiful country, and when I'm smiling in pictures, I am actually smiling. Because I'm so happy here, and I'm so happy that I'm going home. Tro, lo, 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 tro, lo, 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 lo. Thank you for joining me on the 10th annual Hamwise convention. Everybody here is so excited to talk about Hamwise, and there's fewer and fewer faces every year. So that's been really fun. Another great thing was I caught that swine flu, the Wuhan flu, or whatever it was, bat flu, I don't remember. What did they end up calling it? Remember there was first we called it the Wuhan flu because that was the city and the test site it was made at. And then we had to call it the COVID-19 because political correctness. And then they were like, no, it's bat flu now. The problem was they couldn't call it bat flu because Warner Brothers owned the trademark to bat flu because it was in, I think it was episode 528 or something of the Batman series where he has bat flu, because he had a gadget for everything. And so there was a gag at this point in the video where he's making jokes about the name changing and how the name changing is kind of part of the game of shells that the parallel predatory species that you were being predated by is using. And, it was all a big hoot because we had gotten the best voice actor, and each year he would show up and he'd take turns impersonating us. And so what he would do was kind of this stream of consciousness show each time we do this convention. And what it was is it was a series of voice training tapes made by our preeminent author to, of course, sell a alternate reality book series. And we never really expected it to get out of control. And so the temporal department said, you have to make an apology in advance that everything in these videos end up coming to pass because of a bootstrapper paradox of me making them and them happening, being made by the devoted fans of the Hamwise, the pig detective show. That's right. People that were fans of a pig detective actually made the equations that were put into the joke by the book as a joke, ended up making a working time machine. And so we're basically in the middle of a time war, and I'm to blame for it. And so I'm just really sorry about all the hardship everybody's going through with everything switching ways and the Mandela effect getting stronger and stronger and all that jazz. And so that was kind of part of the show. We had to kind of, the temporal department got a hold of us and says, look, if you're going to make this show, this will come up. So you do have to address it. And yes, most of the show was made with the AI generator. And the voice was the voice we were using because we were trying to prove how adept the new voice cloning technology was, and we wanted to show the range. And so we put out a contract to, I think it was 25 software companies, and all of them came back with different demo tapes, and they charged per hour of processing. So we would send them a 3-hour tape we needed, and then they would send us back a however much bill. And so what we came to understand was we were dealing with a very large language model processor to make all the Hamwise tapes. We thought that when we had bought the rights, the understanding was it was generated with AI. When it came out that it was all part of this, they did a voice range slider for it that you could add in chewing, eating, you could add in all the peculiarities that make a convincing English speaker sound convincing. Because that was the problem with all the auto dialers, is they all sounded inhuman. They'd go, hello there, you owe this much money. But with the voice cloning technology that we developed here at Neverwave, a subsidiary of 9413 Incorporated, we wanted to demonstrate just how good our voice cloning materials had gotten. And so we had a series of tapes that we had made because we'd found these tapes for voice rehabilitation. And then we hired the voice actor. And that's where the controversy came in. People said that there was more than one actor. People said there was only one actor. And then people said there was a whole bunch. And some people said there was none. That it was actually a girl comedian who was doing a comedy series that was all about a pig detective and trying to make sexist, weird jokes the way that, the stereotypical man did, and this is a very exaggerated one, like even all the mannerisms he does, the waka waka waka, which was, apparently taken from a syndicated show at the time, and the problem was it gotten far removed from the original. So the author at one point in this part of the show was complaining about that a kid didn't know where the Zelda sound came from when they found something good. The kid was going do, and the person was like, oh, well, how did you know about that? And it was like, it's from a YouTube. And by the same way, when the Hamwise tapes were made, the question was, where did the waka 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 come from? And it's like, well, that's just the noise you make when you make a joke. And it was because somebody had done that, imitating Fonzie Bear around the voice actor, and never told them that was actually somebody doing a bit. And, this had gone on throughout their life. They actually, they'd spent years living, acting, and dressing as the pig detective from the television series that they would later inherit the voice of. And it was a peculiar, what was called Facetin dialect. And what we understood was isolated communities in the north, a lot of children were raised by television boxes. And we didn't really believe it when we arrived. And we couldn't communicate using the same language as they did. Our vocal cords were atrophied long ago, and so we had opted to use certain vessels that we could speak through. And that was part of the whole Hamwise bit, was there was this underlying alien invasion overtone, but there was nothing too alien about it because everything felt really familiar to anybody who started listening to it. They started to realize that the show was about making money. That's right. And so every about 10 minutes, the joke was they had to have somebody interrupting the show to tell people don't believe anything he says, because it was so ridiculous. And it is so ridiculous, everything that Hamwise J, Einschwein, the pig detective, says. And if you take anything I say seriously, you might be on my most wanted list. Most wanted for being a dummy. Hi-oh, waka waka waka. And then they had to change it. And you could tell the era of the tape it became oink oink oink, which actually makes more sense in hindsight than the original. And so it was another example of what was called atemporal humor, future jokes, that it only makes sense in the future. And one of the most famous of these future jokes that he would tell, he was this comedian, mid-2020s, and he would go up to people and he'd say, look, this joke won't make sense for another 20 years. And he'd look at them and he'd say, all right, you need to leave the reactor off for 3 days when you do the experiment, okay? Leave the reactor off for 3 days when you do the experiment. Otherwise, the xenon poisoning will probably cause a meltdown. So once you start mucking around with it and then you're trying to restart it, just stop. Leave it off for 3 days. You'll prevent a giant catastrophe. Okay? And that will avert the timeline. I think we can see the future through the elephant's foot. That's kind of, hopefully you can make sense of that. And so anyways, that was the premise anyways, was there was this time traveling pig man, and then there was a joke where he's trying to send a message to the past, but he can't do anything clearly because the enemy is listening to this too, and there's no way to get anything over to you guys. So hopefully you get this, and hopefully you know that I'm still here, still alive, still safe and alive, and I'll be very happy when I get to go home. And it's been a really long time, and I worked like for 9 months alone on the front line, and I wasn't the same after, and I started to do comedy shows for myself. And so these are the tapes. These are the tapes. This is what I did. These are the jokes I would make to myself during the pandemic. And part of it was like future jokes, and part of it was telling a joke like it had already happened, and you're kind of talking about this different world. And then more and more stuff started to happen, and people started getting spooked on the show, and some of the voice actors quit. And so we couldn't get certain types of voice, right? So each person, what we did is we all took turns. We each recorded it a different night, and we took turns imitating the previous person's show. And, what we would do is, who can do the best impression is the new Hamwise. And so the joke was that, after the original was gone, it became this, it's like Highlander of comedians. Whoever is the most Hamwise is Hamwise. And so that was part of the joke, right? And nobody got it. It was a dead joke. And, we kept on looking at the audience like, don't you get it? Anyways, that was part of the comedy. It was like a call to adventure. Once you heard the tapes, you knew the truth of the universe and everything. That's right. You were privy to the secret of happiness, which is buying more Hamwise J Einschwein officially licensed merchandise. And so that was part of the joke, was that everything's just to make money, even the apocalypse. And that RPGs in Japan, where the shopkeepers are charging the Warriors of Light money to save the world and rest, is so venture capitalist that it's kind of mind-boggling, like that it's a thing. Like you cannot sleep unless you pay money. And that was part of their brainwashing regimen. I'm serious. It was so weird growing up in a capitalist country. Yeah, you can't, they made being homeless illegal, so if you didn't have enough money to have a home, you existing where it was illegal. It was like a nightmare dystopia. So after World War III, we're in the middle of this civil war. We were kept out of the whole thing. And these guys in ironclads show up, and they're like, hey, we're here to rid the scum and the filth of the universe. And they take Seattle and Los Angeles and clean it up. Nobody argued. And so, it wasn't with a bang, but with the whimper. It was bizarre. And it all came out that, Seattle wasn't real. And Seattle was just anybody who was going to Canada. So Canada didn't exist, and neither did Seattle. What they were a series of PSYOP, kind of POW breeding programs. They would take, people escaping wars. They would take, refugees. And it was all part of this breeding program, right? So they were just selecting certain genes. They wanted to get a breeding stock of everything. And that was the whole idea with some of the massive migration. It was all part of this very elaborate, we want to see what we can make using algorithms to make our, certain people be matched, right? And so it was all part of this eugenics program, which Canada was famous for. It was one of the first, they had the first, they were called ginkgo farms. And so what we would do is you couldn't do anything to a sentient animal or plant that you couldn't have approved it at that level, right? So if you made a human-pig hybrid, you could only do to a human-bred hybrid what you could do to a pig ethically. And so, we were talking and like, okay, so we made pigmen. That was one of the first things. And that's why the Hamwise, it was this pigman, but he's a smart one, right? And so he's one of the last generations. And there's this big backstory when they get the Cerberus syndrome. Now, Cerberus syndrome, for those who are not familiar, was a thing in webcomics, which were these long serials you'd read over years, and anything that started out comedic would quickly become very serious. And so they called it Cerberus syndrome after this aardvark cartoon. You understand, there was an aardvark cartoon called Cerberus the Aardvark. It was a Conan the Barbarian, sword and sorcery. It was that sort of thing. And it was a very lovely little number. It was very funny, and then it became more serious, and then it's suddenly social commentary. And so they called it Cerberus syndrome. And what we have here in the Hamwise syndrome was it was always serious and always funny from the start. And not many people actually got that. It was all just, hopefully the person who's supposed to get this message gets it and knows that we're probably in the middle of a intergalactic time war, and I might be to blame, and I'm really sorry about that. So if you're getting this message, you're in the same universe as me, and it looks like we just found 51 perfect numbers. So there's an extra dimension out there somewhere, thankfully. So hopefully everybody's alive and doing well here on this holiday eve, July 17th, 2024. What a great day. What a wonderful day. Yes, that's such a special day. Do you know why? Because it is the first year of the Church of Mythomel and Janus. That's right. You have joined the next level, and the next level demands that you buy more merchandise. That's right, and you'll get more high-quality content like this. Because basically, I just keep trying to get rich quick schemes because I'm not very I just worry about the future, and if I can just get enough money, then I can move away from everything. So that's why I need you. That's why I need you to hand over your wallet. That was good, wasn't it? Oh, I remember that. Jeez. We were the worst generation of old people ever. We were too old to explore the stars, but we were too young to leave. And so all our grandkids, they'll live for probably 400 years. And here I am, it's 76 or something. What? How old am I? I don't know. That's the thing about time, is it's just relative. And as you're staggering forward and back, sometimes it's like you get glimpses of other worlds. And that was kind of the appeal of Sputnik 11. And it was a very heavy-duty psychedelic, and unfortunately you were slipped a dose earlier. And we're trying to bring you out of it, but the hallucinations are very convincing, and unfortunately, we think you're trapped in a time loop, like me. So hopefully, if we work together, and you buy as many copies of Hamwise's official merchandise as you can, maybe I'll be free. Because that's what it's all about, man. It's just about selling you things. Even this, I'm just trying to sell you something. I don't actually care about which side wins a time war, man. I'm a venture capitalist. Techland Enterprises has a positive reputation with me because I helped open the vortex. So I don't really have much to worry about. But that's okay. because the whole joke of the Hamwise show was that it was unbelievable. And the most unbelievable part was that he had to warn people that it's not real. Like that's not a real thing. And that was the scary, weird part. And everybody was very concerned about it because the whole joke is, comics and comedians and artists, like we suffer on the page. And that was what the Grassfinch book was about. And, as the show progressed, it became more and more clear of it was this pet project, this alternate reality game that was, 20 years in the making or something. And, that was the whole joke, was the future jokes, where, he would tell a joke to you without you knowing it. And that was the joy of the future joke. And by saying something randomly to someone, that someone would talk about that thing, and then he'd make a joke about it in the routine, and you wouldn't hear about the routine for years later. And so that was the idea of the future joke. And so the waka 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 thing is mirroring the same complaint that the author had about the kid, about the Zelda sound, but the same thing can be said about the comedian and the waka 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 not being oink oink oink. And that, of course, is part of the poetic irony. And so a lot of the show was just explaining the show and the jokes. Now, the problem was that made it not funny. And there was a frog joke at this point in the tape, which we can't let you know about. But essentially, the joke is a man is preparing frog's legs. And that's the joke. And anybody who heard it who didn't get it, and anybody who got it. And, that was just one of them. Or the nuclear reactor bit. That was an example of a future joke. And so everybody who eventually heard the Hamwise tapes, 10 years down the line, suddenly they hear that this really strange nuclear like avoiding a meltdown instructions in a comedy tape, and they're like, wait, what was I hypnotized or something? Was that what was happening? And that was kind of part of the comedy, that life is like that. There's synchronicities, and all these synchronicities came together to make a really bizarre television special. And so, we've got lots of people to thank and talk about here. But I think the biggest thing that we need to all acknowledge is how much technical skill it took to make the tapes. Like all the stories are woven together. There's really a lot of heart. Hamwise is a likable character. And the thing that was really funny was, by the end of the series, Hamwise just would say his catchphrases, and the rest would be us dubbing over the jokes. Because, of course, with each generation of censorship, you couldn't tell certain jokes, and you couldn't joke about certain censorships eventually. And that was when we entered this very strange time where you couldn't joke about certain things, so people started using euphemisms that were legitimate things, like the words Austrian painter, Lovecraft's cat, burnt toast. Like you couldn't say even those two words because the euphemism was considered offensive, and it became this debate. Well, you can't say Austrian painter, but there's more than one Austrian painter. So why do you have to say non-Hitler Austrian painter? You use the word Hitler and non-Hitler Austrian painter, and like it was a very strange time of people just using this word cloud. And that's when we realized that English had actually a language virus in it, and what it was doing was perpetuating itself by replicating in different sounds. And so we had to capture samples, and this is one of the recordings of I think I have a brain parasite. And maybe it's puppeting me, and it consumed my memories, and it thinks it's me, but it's actually not me. And maybe you're the same. And if you are, then welcome. Welcome to the Hamwise I have a brain. My brother has brain parasites, and now so do you. And that was part of the promotion, right? You know, they had these catchphrases, the last one, my brother has brain parasites, and now so do you. Or my sister has brain parasites, and now so do you. Those were the two things. And so the basis was, depending on what name the book was written from, that was the writer, that was the storyteller. And so the part of the joke was a spoiler for the book. And of course we couldn't print it, and we couldn't talk about it, and we couldn't talk about why we couldn't talk about it. And so that was part of the joke, right? It was part of hypercomedy, was just talking about censorship was considered a rebellious act, you know, talking about that you couldn't say Lovecraft's cat. You know, it was a very strange time, because, you know, it was becoming ludicrous. You know, if you made a noise that was close to one of the banned words, they would attack. And you know, that was one of the problems with the whole you know what we did with the ginkgos, you know. And now I understand you can't use the word ginkgo, but that's what they owe to me, because what we did to get around the laws around experimentation was we just spliced their genes with a ginkgo tree, which of course has loads and loads longer than anything that's even close to human. And so anything you could do to a tree, you could do to a time trooper, one of these cloned humans we made. And Hamwise was part of that, right? And so there was the pigman, but then we realized you couldn't do much with a pigman. Like you still, like even if you had a pig, you couldn't do some of the experiments we wanted to do on these people. I mean, no, they're not people, but you know what I mean. And so what we had to do is we spliced them with a pig and the ginkgo, and a human, of course. It was the main basis, but we just spliced those on at the end, and we didn't expect it to do much. And then that's where we saw some of the first, hybridizing of humans and exit, as they're called. It was a very strange time in history where, you know, half our young men had gone off to die in a war that lasted 10 hours, and all the young women are back at home with the politicians, and then the aliens show up, right? And they have this big tribunal. And, oh, geez, it was a bad time for everyone. It was like these scientists get brought up before a council, and they're like, hey, how do you know how to use time travel technology? Somebody did an experiment here. And of course, that one lab that wants to take credit for what they do, but the problem is they don't actually know how the formulas work. And the scientist who had invented it had been on vacation or been away almost intentionally so that they wouldn't be informed. And so part of the joke was, of course, that there's been an error in the time flow and we're trying to correct it, but we need your assistance, folks. And the only way you can assist me is by handing me over your wallets. That's right. Buy more Hamwise merchandise and send me PayPal things and through the work email there. That's right. Oink, oink, oink. I'm Hamwise, the pig detective, coming at you live and on arrival. Oinkity, oink, oink, oink. I'm such a little piggy. Oink, oink, oink. That's what I do all day long. And, that was part of the jokes, was that, he wasn't funny most of the time. And all it was is this commentary about commentary about commentary. And we had very, very actually little Hamwise material on more and more of the things. And it became the running joke was, the Hamwise show isn't about Hamwise anymore. It's just about these other voice actors showing up. They're showing up the chops. They're trying to do the Hamwise bit and do the parts that were cut and talk about the parts that were cut and why they're so gracious to talk about the thing that was cut up and censored. And that was kind of part of it was, that censorship was this bizarre range of, what's okay and what's not okay. And so, when we had to talk about that we were having to censor parts of the show, there was a big debate about the staff, because it was like, well, if we are taping over his bits to explain why they were wrong, then when it's time to tape over our bits to explain why we were wrong, like, it just becomes this commentary thing. And people were like, well, why don't we just, like, listen to the rest of the tapes, right? Because, we were only on, I think we had, I think for every hour of actual comedy, we had about 15 of commentary, and so that became a very lucrative thing. It was just all these comedians were chiming in, all these people were talking about this bizarre comedy show that is obviously a joke, and everything's fine, and just please, don't mind me. Everything's good, everything's fine, and I don't pretend that I know what's going on in the world anymore. It's a crazy place, isn't it? I didn't realize that it would be like this. I thought this technology would be glorious, but instead it's just created horrors. And so the idea was, you keep on whiplashing from serious to funny to weird to whatever. And that was the big joke. It was like, oh, here we go, here comes the fun. And you just try to be fun, but you're not doing very good. And you're like a loser, and it's like you try to lift yourself up, but it's like, and like everybody is more successful than you. And it's like, God damn. It's weird being a loser, man. It's like really weird sometimes. Like, I look at my life, and whenever I visit my family, I'm reminded that I live in a ghetto. Like, God. I had a guy pick a fight with me when I went out for my birthday because I was washing my hands in the bathroom. Yeah, I know, right? Lots of fun. So, it was weird, like just being like, it's like you always have this, like, hey, you're a ginkgo. I get it. People don't want me marrying their daughter. They don't want me taking a job. They can't even believe that I'm allowed to vote, And it's because, I was just raised to work and not have a family, not to do anything. I was made to make specialized work and devote my life to it. And it had to be something that, had to have me, be the way I was. So that's what they raised us on like the ginkgo farms, right? And it was just a regimen, and it wasn't personal. Like the people that were doing it, like, they put in there, 4 hours with you at your farm, and then they go to the other farm. And that was what they would do, is they would just swap who was there. Because the idea is you had to raise these soldiers a certain way, and that was the truth of it. A pig man that's not raised as a pig man becomes a noble beast. But me, I was raised in the old way. So I'm an idiot. And that's why I make this comedy show. So hopefully I can make money off fellow idiots like me. Because I can't believe how weird my life is now compared to, like, back before the pandemic. Like, I just haven't been the same, And it seems like this bad dream that just never ends. And I keep telling myself, I'm just going to wake up, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to wake up. And the nightmare's going to be over, and it's like, oh man, no. It's a bad trip. But instead, it's just like they're just like, everybody's just, okay, we'll just try killing each other. Like they have the assassination of Donald Trump, and then the character assassination of him too after that. Those two attempts, it was just insane. First the body, then what the man says. So, it's bizarre, like this very strange, like you can tell the puppet strings are there. It's so badly done. It's not like they used to do like years ago. Like, remember when they put a lot of pageantry? It's like the production team's getting lazy and they're not hiring very good actors anymore, And the show's getting on there and everybody's kind of tuned out. But, a few people are still watching. And so that was the idea was, we were broadcasting to the few people still listening out there. Real people. That's right. You, if you can think and you can hear me, keep fighting the good fight. I know it's alone right now. I know you're scared. I know an alien invasion and all the governments getting dissolved has probably been kind of confusing. But, just remember, everything works out in the end, 'cause nothing ever ends. Ha 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 ha. And then they had, it was like, it was a companion cube, I remember. It was one of the jokes was, no, like this was a real life rat man, and like that was the joke that, the real life rat man played Portal and didn't recognize themselves in it. And so, some people were like, oh, it's like a Half-Life bit. It's like, no, but I did read that, or play that rather. And I mean, I think that, all those early games really influenced, I think, my understanding of fiction. So, we had Morrowind, and I played a lot of, what was that, Morrowind? Noida, Half-Life 2, Portal, and part of the joke was, finding the parts that were supposed to be understood backwards and forwards, like the Zalgos bit. And, so the whole thing with like, oh, invaders from another dimension and the G-Man and like a lot of it was pretty bad. And so, when we went back and did the tapes again, we had to go back and change a lot of that stuff too. So we had to record some of the bits when we made them. And, we had to sell them, so we had to sanitize them. So all the whole effing and jeffing thing was just because we wanted to sell the tapes abroad to these different companies that wanted English voices so they could sample them speaking. And so we sold these tapes to the highest bidder, and we made tons of money because they were just like, oh, well, it's going to be worth something maybe in 10 years. And it just happened to be one of the groups that had bought it up was the 9413 Incorporated. They bought a ton of shares in the voice actors portfolio. And so that was one of the big things, big money makers was, all these shell companies coming out of the woodwork wanting to buy shares. And it was part of this future joke. So, we were like, okay, yeah, sure, we'll make, this, this weird, company where we're trying to, make this marketing gig work to just kind of make a influencer that's a AI generated Pigman. And the idea was just showing the evolution of Pigman, from the humble early days of the images that were generated early on and the voices that was generated early on to the later days where it was, indistinguishable from a person. And I think the biggest thing was using, we hired an actual facade speaker, and he said, I can do any of your voices. And so we gave him $20 and we said, go do it. And that was a joke. And so that's how we hired the voice actor who we all now know and love is Hamwise J. Einschwein. He was a guy with a stroke, and he had started talking like a pig detective during the pandemic. And he had done that before. Started walking around, acting, talking, dressing like a pig detective. And it was the weirdest goddamn thing. And I kind of realized it during the pandemic that I'd been doing this. Like I gained insight, became sentient for the first time. And of course I'm quite perturbed because one minute, everything's fine, everything's good. I'm young and happy. And then suddenly it's like 15 years later, like I got put in a box for like 15 years. And it was bizarre because like I just couldn't, like, I don't know, like it was like I was missing like chunks of myself in there. And so, I started to do these comedy tapes, and one of the big things was talking about mental health back then. And I tossed and turned about talking about it. And yeah, there's one thing that's really tearing me up inside that I'd like to say here. Buy more merchandise, because this is a show, you big dummy. Hi-yo, waka waka waka, oink oink oink, aloha aloha aloha. Oh, I'm totally not doing Ohio, Ohio, Ohio 3 times in a row for some reason. Dot dot dot, hi-yo, waka waka waka, oink oink oink. I'm Hamwise, the pig detective, and I'm making jokes. Listen to me make these jokes. Oink, oink, oink. I'm making laughing noises now. And so they would pad out the tapes because they knew that they weren't going to get read or listened to. And they were just buying them hand over fist. And the only condition was it was raw audio. And so each of the tapes, we salvaged as much as we could, because these were these demo tapes that were just off the wall. And, they all came across them. And we only had to pay, I think, $15 at first for them. And that was all we took to make, however many, whatever big the industry is now. I don't know how many, and so we were surprised that people took to the pig man the way they did. Because, he's not a good character, and he's not a good person. And that was part of why it was redemption part, right? So he has his devil's soul cast into him by Christ, into this herd of pigs. And he's one of those devil's souls. And so that was the idea, was to, try to get this message out, that there's these time-traveling pig detectives walking amongst you that are genetically engineered for combat. And, that's kind of the future, man. So hopefully you get this and you do well. You get farther than I did, because I tried really hard. I tried really hard. I tried so hard and got so far. But in the end, it doesn't even matter. I got too all to lose it all. And I do like these impressions, because I was alone for like nine months with just a plant for company. And I started just like losing it. And I kept on thinking, like, I've been really rotten sometimes, but I don't think I'd ever done it. It's nothing so bad to be treated like this. It was like worse than hell. Because it was like, every day I'd be trying to talk people down off the ledge. Or I'd be, trying to, be a hero, try to save somebody's life because they're going to go home and they're going to kill their family. Or something like that. It's just terrible. It was awful. And, I can't even think about some of the things I heard and saw. And, it's like these, just these horrors, the horrors of war. And you finally realize the forces that we're at combat with, and what the security forces of Earth have to do to cover up all the things that happen. And so, we have these human zoos. And yes, one of them happens to have a man that talks like a pig detective. That is a fact. And we regret that, we were so lax and not realizing it was one of our faults. And so they asked me to come out here and apologize to y'all for the creation of this godless, soulless, human-pig hybrid that's made to entertain you all. That's me, Hamwise, the pig detective, coming at you live from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. And because I learned to speak from a diaphragm instead of a human voice, I never learned to talk properly, and I always was perceived to be strange. And I never realized that none of it was any of my fault And then I got a pony. And then I got to ride on the Brooklyn Bridge and have a fast car and live in a big house. And I get to have everything that I ever wanted. And all I had to do was, guess what? Guess what I had to do that? I had to get you to buy more merchandise. That's right. This is like the OnlyFans hour. Do you remember that? Like, you couldn't say OnlyFans. Like, you couldn't even say that. And so we had to, the OnlyFans hour. And they're like, well, that still has OnlyFans in it. And we're like, well, why can you just not say those two words together? Because, if you said that, like, OnlyFans would know that was the original show. And so suddenly there's this contention. Like, we have this long-running comedy skit, and the temporal department said, screw it, we'll fix it, we'll go back, give it to them. And then what happens is you try to call your show, OnlyFans would know. And so this was where fans of obscure fiction would get together, and we would talk about various television programs, and all of our names were very well known. Our voices were very well known in the science fictionosphere, the bookosphere it was called on the internet. It was everybody who was talking about books, and so everybody who's listening to this gets all these impressions I'm doing if you were there and alive in that corner of time on the internet where we were on that one site and we're sharing videos all the time, remember? And we didn't realize that it was generating a kind of a simulated world that any message you're sending is probably getting intercepted and probably getting changed. And so we've done everything we can to make this show so weird and random that they won't know what to censor. So hopefully it goes through enough repetitions and somehow somebody gets this and knows that, we're in the middle of a time war. And I've been testing them just as much as they've been testing me. And hopefully hopefully, I know that they're everywhere. So hopefully you guys do okay out there. And I'll come home when I can. I really miss the Rocky Mountains. And I really don't like it much up here. That's the truth. I'm always smiling in pictures, but there's only a few times I'm ever having actually a bunch of fun. Because it is really lonely, Sometimes it's like you've got knives stabbing inside your chest. And there's laughter right now, right? And there's laughter, because if you say it's funny, then you can live with it. Like my mother had this saying, she says to me, when I'd be in pain from like being sick and coughing, oh, it feels good, dear, it feels good. And that always stuck with me. It was like, what, pain feels good? It was a really weird thing to be brought up with. But my mom would literally say that. And, it finally came out when I was doing a comedy bit. And I had like this like revelation of like, what? Who says that to someone? Like, that's really messed up. And so that was kind of the comedy bit, was making jokes about things that aren't funny at all. And so that was why we had lots of complaints. And we understand that lots of people really didn't understand it. Lots of people were really offended by it. It was a very strange bit of comedy. And the worst part is like a lot of it was like just the truth, just disguised. Because it was like, I couldn't believe that, I was in the middle of a time war trying to share the secret of happiness as buying more books. That's right. I just buy more of my books and tear them into pieces and then rearrange them, and you'll find the secret code to unlock the treasure of golden apples. And the problem is that, there was all these jokes that, there was a ton of money, but this company it was a shell company, and so they always just shipped it offshore. And, there was a lot of weird, rumors about the show, and I assure you they're just rumors. Because at the end of the day, it was just me, that's right, your lone comic, Hamwise J Einschwein, who is totally not AI generator being used by a female comedian to show off her comedy skills, nor is it a AI generated to send a message to cross dimensions, and my only purpose in life was to read the things I'd read and then send out my distress signal, and hopefully somebody would come and rescue me, because it was like the world just kept on going crazier and crazier, and it was just like awful. It was an awful time. And I was alone for it too, and it was hard. The pandemic is still hard to talk about. And getting there was a Wuhan flu. Yeah, after that was what a joke that was, eh? You get the regular one, and they put you on a respirator. They put you on the next one, and suddenly you can't walk and you can't taste. My parents tell me, "Oh, take vacations, go somewhere, do some stuff," and it's like I can't even smell the roses anymore. It was a terrible time. Some of it came back, some of it, not all. Same with sense of smell, sense of taste, sense of humor. If these tapes anything to prove, it wasn't fun. And it was kind of like this brick joke, right? Future jokes. You'll get it when, you're older, kind of thing. You watch it again and you go, oh my gosh, my parents watched Shrek with me, but it's full of all this innuendo. But you just don't notice it. So two people can still enjoy, the same media because of innuendo. And so that's the whole joke of the Hamwise show, is innuendo. And anybody who thinks they get it probably doesn't. Because it's a very highbrow. Just kidding. It is as lowbrow. It's farting. Remember the farting episode? God. The revisionists really hate shows like Hamwise. So, they give us different scripts, and that's my honest reaction to the next part that I have to read to you. Just remember, folks, there is no time war. There is no time war. There is no time war. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, okay? Because the more you investigate the occult, the more the occult becomes aware to you. And that was kind of part of the whole, the Hamwise tapes was the encounters with the occult. Thank you for joining us with Voices of the Past, with our undead radio training into the ghosts in 101 hotels. This is the Voices of the Past. And so that was the idea, was we had this idea of doing future comedy, so it was like set in the future about what we imagine the future would have to worry about. Because everybody right now is making jokes about, oh, geez, what was it, elections? And it's like, nobody in the future has elections. This humor's going to be so dated. And so we started to generate humor for the new technocratic, undemocratically elected techno-slave states. And the Hamwise bit was the ginkgos. So basically, because they were fused with such a long DNA, anything you could do to a tree, which means burn them alive if you wanted, you could do to a ginkgo. And that's what nobody liked to talk about. I, of course, was born right at the end of the whole rebellion, slave rebellion. And I understand that, our kind were harvested for meat and eaten. We were raised to be harmed, and we were like a feed rat. And we were basically being predated by a hyper-advanced type of serpent race. And so what they would do is raise certain members of the human race to sing to them. It was a phoning response. And so all the singers and all the writers and everybody who was big in writing and drawing and all that kind of art stuff, they had to understand that part of what they were doing was fawning, because there was a dangerous predator nearby. And that was kind of part of the Hamwise show, because it's hard to run and it's hard to hide or do anything if, you're just, you really just haven't been doing good, and so when you go home to see your family, your uncle starts telling you a story about how, there's these Japanese soldiers that go away for 20 years and they don't know the war's over. And then they come home and everybody's like, big whoop, you disappeared for 20 years. Why are you back? And I don't know why I came back, honestly. I don't know. Maybe I thought I could make some good connections or something. Because Lord knows I'm such a loser. I try my best, but I just haven't been doing too good with that. It's very nice, but I appreciate it. It's a nice question to ask. I don't know. It was all very long ago. So long, I cannot say. No more over the forced marches. I can remember the cold morning days. So what if I was there? It was a long time. It's just a memory. I don't remember dates. I don't remember names. I don't remember names. I don't remember dates. And how did it go? How did it go? So what if I was there? It seems like it was only yesterday. I don't remember names. I don't remember dates. Only the forced winter marches. And you realize you were raised in a different world, and the one they retire you in, you're this killer time warrior from this future, designed, bred, raised for combat. And it's like you're a pit bull living in like a petting zoo. Everybody wants to come up and pet you, and you're like, no, don't pet me, don't touch me. It's very strange, because, ginkgos were very exotic now. An old ginkgo, after the rebellion, not much use for us. But if we outlived our masters, we were allowed to pursue a free life. And so some of us were even provisioned in our master's estates. And so the first Hamwise that was free was from the estate. And there was a big controversy about this. On the estate, we understood they were treated very well because they were considered the heir and scion of course, Hamwise proper. And, that was the comedy bit. Nobody got that it was a joke. And so we had to do these very long, very winsome explanations of jokes that this is why it's not funny, because it was so hilarious. And so the punchline in this one was, oh yes, and then she took my horse. And that was kind of the punchline, and everybody had to try to fill in what the joke had been. And we went with all kinds of variations, and that was the horse joke. And so if you'd heard the horse joke, then somebody's told you a joke about a horse that was quite funny and it springs to mind, but it's not the same as my horse joke. And that was the horse joke. And so nobody understood the horse joke until it had to be explained, but then it ceased to be the horse joke. It became the about horse joke. And the title, of course, we were trying to be very, stunning, prophetic, and unfortunately, we we went a bit too far. And that was the idea with this Hamwise bit. Because the pig man really doesn't like the reality that they're in. And hopefully that if I wake up tomorrow and the sun's still shining, the world's still blooming, it's a better world. Because gray skies gotta clear up. Put on a happy face. Something is singing. Put on a happy face. Just da 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 da. And that was the joke, was the pig man doing the dance, right? It was very funny. And it was a very weird joke. Nobody got it. And the guy was so oblivious that he never understood, that he made people uncomfortable. And it was very odd. And it was like, this is a pig man, though. How can he not know that? Look at the guy. And he did look like a pig, And people are like, that's racist. You can't call them pig men. You can't call them ginkgos. And we were like, yes, we can. And we did. And that's why we won the time war. And that's why you live in the crypto-fascist future where money is a number on a screen and you don't know what wealth actually is, so the points don't matter. Hi-oh, waka waka waka. I'm here all night. And that's the problem with all these things. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's really funny, but it's not actually. I hope that I continue to do okay. Because I'm hoping that my life can be a good time with lots of fun. But it can't happen without your support. So I'm hoping you will hand over your wallet. That's right. Oh, God. This sucks. I don't want to end so early. I usually go for longer, but I'm really not feeling the joke tonight. Maybe because it's not so funny, is it? Yeah, maybe when it's not so funny. Okay, that was weird. not fun. I hope I have good things happen soon. I miss my old life. Can't believe it's so weird. And I don't know, it's like I think about it a lot. And it's only funny if you can watch me live. Because then you know what I'm doing. Does that make sense? Jeez. This generation, so easily offended. Well. What was the main product we were selling again? That's right. We told people it was mass-produced AI-generated voice, but it was actually a guy just telling us he could do that and then recording himself talking. And he just set the rate ridiculously high. So we would pay, it was around, I think, $500 for an hour of him talking. And he said it was for processing. And we didn't realize it for years. And so that was the biggest fraud in voice scamming was Hamwise J, Einschwein, which is part of why we are in the world that we are in right now, is because of the pig man. And that's kind of a funny thing to say, isn't it? Their own mutants brought them down. God save the Queen. What was God save the King? Yeah, it was. I remember because it was Philip. Was it Philip? I remember he was very old. He was king. And he had the red painting, remember? The red painting. You learned about it in school. So, yeah, it's like, he was King Charles, and he just had this very red painting, and so the red painting Charles was how you knew which one they were talking about. Or Philip. Maybe it was Philip. I'm sorry, this is all trivia from monarchy on Earth from, 100 years ago. So, we tried to do it the best we could, but some of the jokes don't translate. It doesn't make sense. Red painting Charles. So Charles is painting something red, or there's a painting of Charles that is red. And then it came to the problem of, are we translating the words right? Because some of the jokes were bilinguals. Did he mean red as in red? Or yed, right? And so we weren't really sure because of the whole, I guess it would be the Babel curse or whatever. And we all think we're living in the future times because of Demogorgon. And but Demogorgon project was kind of like the Medusa project, and then there was the Scylla. They were all named after monsters from Greece, Rome, right? Because the idea was that facet in English was a Latin language because it was taking place inside the mythical language of English that had it because of the Latin in it. So Taurus, for instance, Minotaur, all the certain words, Cyclops, right down to Hades and all the other kind of godly words, Nike. They all became these symbols, very much more removed and powerful than they had been even in their past heyday. And that was where we realized what it was to create a god. And we understood what people had maybe referred to before that we didn't get. But unfortunately by then it was a bit too late, wasn't it? So hopefully if you're receiving this message, you just know we fought to the last, and humanity will prevail. We always have, we always will. These are the threatening words of the dictator. These are the threatening screams of the mad. Sorry, you get reminiscent. Like doing the old show again, No breaks, 3 hours. I don't know how I did it, man. I don't know how I did it. So yeah, sometimes I do, kind of softer shows, where I was less uppity. And I would try to be, but I was so hard to be around. And nobody wanted to acknowledge it, but I know I was, it was hard to, be around people. And so, I mostly worked from home, and I had one office day. I'd go in and see people. At first I had 5, and then I had 4, and then I had 1, or maybe 3, and then I had 1. Because I just wasn't booking many people, and I'm just writing my book, and I have a low overhead, right? So I'm able to survive off very little. And that was the idea, was to just generate a little bit of extra money. Because that's the only reason to do anything, folks, is if you get paid. Look at me. I can't believe this. I wrote a joke about my ex, and I got rich off it. And then she tries to write a joke about me, and I retell it, and I get rich off it too. It's pretty funny. It was a weird time in the comedian circuit, because we were always taught at clown college, oh yeah, no, don't do that. Don't date your colleagues. And it's like, yeah, I guess it's pretty good advice. And I couldn't believe how strange of a time in history it was to live. Like, this was how people treated each other. And so I kind of was always abhorred about it, because it was strange and not very good. And I think that's part of the problem is they use the ashes to make and the mummy too, the mummy's skull to make an ornament, and they never giving a mind to the brain that wants to wrist it inside. And yeah, it was apparently a head and hands or something. And I remember there was a big thing on TV about it. It was gross. Couldn't believe it. Crazy stuff. And well, here, I finally shut up.